So you can come to that if you want to do the hands-on stuff. I'm going to tell a bit more about the context. But actually, I think the majority of this session is the most exciting, because that's going to show some early pilot projects and partner projects that are using structured data in commons. So we will have, it's called a panel in the program, but it's more a succession of 4 short presentations of 10 minutes each, where we will see 4 very different projects that use structured data in commons already, with inspiration. So basically what I thought what would be a good format, it would be that after each piece of talk, like mine and the 4 short presentations, we will have room for 1 quick question, but then we move on to the next. But at the end of the session, we will also have more time for questions. This is like an hour and 15-minute session, so I really hope we will have enough time for that. So that's it for housekeeping. And hello everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Sandra. I work for the Wikimedia Foundation, the GLAM team, and specifically the past 2 years and a bit, I have been working a lot on the project Structured Data on Wikimedia Commons, and specifically on how structured data on commons can be used in a good way by cultural institutions, by GLAMs. What I'm going to do in the presentation is give you a bit of updates about structured data on commons, what has been developed so far, and also what is coming. I don't know if there are people in the room for whom structured data on commons itself is very new, that it's something, a concept that you haven't heard about yet. Don't be shy, please raise your hand, because then I have a bit of an idea. Okay, not so many people. So I'm going to explain also a bit what it does. So hopefully not too abstract. So Wikimedia Commons is the media repository of Wikipedia. It's where all the images live. It's not just an image base, but we also have videos, sounds, 3D files since quite some time, a year or 2. And it has always been a wiki, so it's editable, but it has always been written in wiki text, in strings, in text. So it's never been really fully a kind of classical kind of database. And a long-term ask from the Wikimedia Commons community has been to make it more structured, to make it better machine-readable, and also to solve an ongoing long problem to make it much more multilingual. If at this moment you don't speak English and you start to search comments in your own language, be it Spanish, be it Chinese, you will find much less stuff than when you would speak English. And that's a big hurdle for findability of the files, reuse of the files. And so in the past 2.5, 3 years, I and my team have been working on a project called Structured Data on Commons that actually integrates metadata from Wikidata, our structured repository or structured knowledge base, to help describe files on Commons, to make the files on Commons multilingual to start with, but also it produces much richer APIs that tool builders can use in a lot better way. Search will become better on Commons. At this moment it's not implemented yet, but the search will become multilingual. And many new kind of exciting things can happen in terms of organizing the files in an automated way and doing all kinds of nice things with it. And we will see already some glimpses of that in the pilot projects, I hope. Loading. It's going back. Is that a Wi-Fi thing? I don't know. We just have a few slides that don't show up. Actually, what these slides are saying, and if you want to see them, they are also linked from the Etherpad from this session, so maybe you can see them and I cannot. But basically what they are trying to demonstrate is kind of what we are trying to do on Wikimedia Commons, is tagging things like you have an image of what it actually shows. Let me describe it. It's a beautiful image taken by, I think, a drone of a fisherman on the Volta River. And he's sitting in a pirogue in a canoe boat, and he has fishing nets. And now with structured data on Commons, you can actually add structured data that says these things, depicts the Volta River, depicts a boat, depicts a fisherman, depicts a fishing net. But then if you switch your interface language to another language, if you search if you look at it from in Spanish, in Brazilian Portuguese, you will actually see these things not in English, but you will see the Spanish or the Brazilian or the Dutch concepts. So basically that's what we're doing. It's very strange because in other sessions it worked. I had the same slides, but anyway. So I hear someone say something? No. Oh, So I'm sorry about that, but please check it through the Etherpad, the images. So actually new things that have been rolled out quite recently, actually this year in 2019, is you can now add multilingual file captions, little short descriptions of files that can be in many, many languages, depict statements and other statements. And you can add these via the file page itself. So you can go to a file on Wikimedia Commons and then click, I will demonstrate it actually. Simple example, and here the image shows up. So this is a very beautiful photo of close-up of sugar cubes by one of our more prolific contributors. It is a featured picture also on Wikimedia Commons. How do you describe this image with structured data? Well, the first element that you can now add, first I have to say for those people who have been contributing to Commons for a long time, you might already have seen this, that we have this new very subtle small interface element on the file page under the image that has two tabs, file information and now structured data. Under file information itself, you see captions. Captions are in fact short, like short descriptions of what you see in the image, and this is being fed to the search index. So these words that are being put here, the short descriptions of what you see in the image, will help to retrieve and to find this file. What is the difference between what we already have in descriptions currently in the templates, for those who are familiar with Wikimedia Commons, is that the descriptions we have in the templates are of course not integrated in the same structured way in the APIs, so it's a bit more complicated to retrieve them. But also the descriptions can have wiki text, can have links, can have even some kind of markup, while these captions are meant to be kept extremely simple, so that they can be easily reused through the API. That's basically the purpose of captions is really at this moment mostly to make search work better. Then here's where actually the big Wikidata integration happens. When you click on the Structured Data tab, you will see new things there. At first, that was deployed already a few months ago. You can add all the things that you can see in this image. If it would be a sound file, it would be the musical piece that would be in it. Or if it would be a video, it would be the people that would appear in this video. So it's not, it says depicts, but depicts is in a broad sense what is represented, portrayed, shown, what is the content of this file. And in this case, it shows sugar cubes. So when you start editing this, you can type here and then it will give you, so when you start typing sugar cubes, and it will look up the item of the Wikidata item, and then you can say it depicts the sugar cube, which is a link to Wikidata, which is actually Wikidata here. And you can also qualify it, you can also give a bit more information about it. So things like quantity, it's 12 sugar cubes. And they are white, they are not the brown kinds, but they are the white kind. And a very recent new deployment in the user interface is that you can add other statements as well. So for people familiar with Wikidata, this will look, very, very familiar as well. Besides things depicted in a file, there are many other things that you can say about an image on Commons or a video file, like who created it. That's kind of important information. Who was the photographer of this photo? What is the license? So this is kind of a simple one. I think that will be quickly added to many files as well. But also for this specific image, you have a property that is only used not on Wikidata, but just on Wikimedia Commons, Commons Quality Assessment. It's a new property, and that actually says this is a featured image, it's a quality image. So this is where, what our Commons community has been doing for a long time already, saying that images are of high quality or that they are a featured picture. At this point, you can also express that in structured data. And I said you cannot search it yet. Well, that's not entirely sure, because you have a method of doing that with a specific sentence, has WB statements, column P180 equals Q number, etc. Easy, right? So not yet in full human readable text, but there's already tricky ways in which you can figure out, how many files or comments have a license, or have a creator. So that's the way to do it now. But of course, better ways will come. Rest assured. Then many people, why is this bar still showing up? I don't know, technology. Many people are also asking, okay, what's coming next? Structured Data Commons has been a grant-funded project for 3 years, started in early 2017, and we are actually ending the grant 2019, but of course the work will not stop. But before the end of the year, we hope to finish Sparkle querying, working super hard on that. Lua support, which is in fact the technology, the scripting language with which you can use structured data and display it in templates in wikis. So that will allow, I had a question before, can we then use structured data from Commons in Wikipedia with Lua? Yes, you can. More data types. If you're a Wikidata expert, or just a user of Wikidata, and you will try to add, for instance, when a file was created, you will not be able to do that yet because we don't have the date and time file data type yet. But that will be soon deployed as well. So date is coming. Sorry? Oh. Sure. Okay. Not now. Not now. Later. Remind me later. Oh well. So more data types. Geo-coordinates are also upcoming, not there yet in the user interface. Through API, you can already do it, by the way. It's just not in the user interface. Which URL identifier, these are the obvious ones that we will need. They are coming, so rest assured, don't lose your sleep over it. I'm not losing my sleep over it. So. Upload wizard for custom campaigns. So people who do Wikilove's Monuments, Wikilove's Earth, can already use structured data in the upload wizard at this moment. So if you want to create your custom upload wizard for a campaign and you want to make sure that your participants use structured data there, that's already possible. But we've also had feature requests that maybe you already want to pre-fill some fields, like this is for this specific campaign, this is for Wikilove's Monuments, Belgium 2019, something, without even the user knowing that they are entering that kind of stuff is being added. And one thing that we haven't advertised actually very broadly, but that is quite nice, I think, is we're also experimenting with machine vision. So with AI-based detection of what can be shown in an image. The first idea is to integrate that in the upload wizard process. So when you upload images, AI will run over it and suggest to you what depicts text. Maybe, of course, you are of course free then to either decline or say that these things are correct. And for those people who are worried about bias and such, we are really investigating very deeply which algorithms or which existing systems produce the least bias, and there are also plans to develop our own algorithms for this. We might also do, that's a careful thing that my colleagues have added there, because we don't want to overpromise and under-deliver, but we know that search is super important. At this moment, what we have in terms of code is something that allows there to be a gadget for search, so not really an overhaul of search itself, because that will be super complicated. We've kind of wrapped our head around it, and it's a complex thing. But a gadget for search is a probable thing. Depicts of depicts is, how shall I explain this? I will not. Not now, looking at the time, but if you have a question, you can ask me. But it's useful, I can tell you. And then image annotations are also things that many people ask for, that you can say, this particular bit of this image shows this bird. We are thinking about it, it's further down the line, I have to be honest about that. Yeah. But now, the most important part, and the part that I am most excited about, actually a lot of my work the last year, I think, and already a bit starting before that, has been, okay, so now we have this new technology out there, but how will this work for, collaborations with cultural institutions, with all kinds of, community-driven projects that we do about heritage? How do we figure out how this technology works? And my task will also be to help document how best practices, how you can, add structured data, how as an institution you donate images to Wikimedia Commons, how should you add structured data to it. And for that purpose, I am mentoring a set of pilot projects, GLAM pilot projects. And yeah, it's kind of an overview of diverse ways in which our community do collaborations. So there is an example of an art museum doing a first test of how you should do this. We have a collection of decorative arts, of maps. The Met is also working on this, so an encyclopedic museum with a broad collection. Sadiq will a bit later tell about more community-driven initiatives. We are also thinking about, is there a potential of structured data and commons helping also to have easier integration with Wikisource? So that's a pilot that we're running. And then we have some tools and prototypes and research running. And actually the next presentations will be about that. So yeah, hereby I open the floor for just one question, and then I will hand on the mic to Andre. Does anyone have a question? Oh, Florence.
I wonder what depicts what?
I had not expected that question. Okay. So, it's complicated. If you really want to understand, come to the hands-on session, because there I will go more in depth. But so what you sometimes have is that you have a photo of a sculpture, and that sculpture is a sculpture of a bird. What will you do then? Actually, what you have then is you have the image depicts the sculpture, and that sculpture, that will be a Wikidata item. And then that Wikidata item will say depicts bird, or depicts a pelican, for instance. We have a pelican sculpture in Rotterdam. And what we actually want to make sure is that that's actually a good way to model that, that's correct. What we want to make sure is that at some point the search will also do this two steps process, go to the Wikidata item and see what the Wikidata item depicts as well. So if you search for pelican, you will also get my sculpture photo. Does that make sense, or is everyone now super confused? I see heads nodding, that's fantastic. Wow, alrighty, good. So that was the one question. Thank you.
I was actually wondering that exactly yesterday evening, so that's perfect.
Oh, fantastic. Well, more questions can follow later. So now I'm super happy to hand the mic to Andre Costa. Andre is Chief Operations Officer of Wikimedia Sweden. Yes, you are. And he works on a project called Finding GLAMs, which actually also works with structured data and commons and looks at structured data and commons. And we work closely together and inspire each other, and you're going to say a few words about that.
Yeah. Thanks. So as Sam said, I'm Andre Costa. I work at Wikimedia, and we're running the Finding GLAMs project. So that's being run together with UNESCO, Wikimedia Foundation, and the goal is to bring online as much freely licensed information about cultural heritage institutions as possible. And it has two bits, and I'll briefly talk about them, but there's only one that's really relevant for this. So the first is collating a database of cultural heritage institutions and the collections that they contain. And this is done in part by finding, aggregating publicly available datasets, and in part by crowdsourcing. I will not say more about that here. That's a different presentation. The second part, though, is looking at how we can support GLAMs to share their content. And this we do through creating case studies, best practices, and guides. And before I go on to talk about 3 of these case studies as examples, the project isn't finished. We're about halfway through. None of the bits that will make use of structured data and commons are done yet. So just so you know that before you start asking me too detailed questions. So the first set of these case studies revolves around problematic data. So a lot of GLAM collections contain images or materials that have problematic data, by which I mean either the more obvious case where the data contains or metadata that uses language that we today would consider to be racist or discriminatory or offensive one way or another. But very often there's also then a second level where through just omission we're belittling the depicted cultures or generalizing them in many ways. So for this image, for instance, so it's on Commons, it would likely have a caption along the lines of Sami woman wearing traditional clothing. That will be it. Although it probably won't say Sami, it will use an older derogatory term. It will not say who she was. Was she famous? That's not considered. That's often not captured in the metadata that we get. It will say traditional clothing, but it will not say the name of the clothing, from which region that clothing is. It's missing all of this extra information, and of course, all of the metadata will be in Swedish. It won't be in any of the Sami languages. So the first work that we're doing with this is that there will be a workshop next week, the week after, soon, with GLAMs, where they're trying to develop recommendations for how you deal with this material once you make it available to a much broader public that don't know how this metadata was created, and sort of that you might not stand by it today, like those statements that are being made. And the second is we're looking at how can you structure data on Commons to do targeted campaigns to encourage translations of these in the languages where this culture is relevant. It's relevant, that this culture depicts. Adding this extra content that's missing, fixing glaring mistakes, and thereby also enabling a shared ownership and sort of curation of this material, because it's held by a Swedish museum, or Norwegian museum in this case, not by a Sami museum. So trying to figure out, now that it's digital and online, how can we actually share that ownership? So a targeted campaign here would, for instance, then bring up this collection, see if we can collaborate with Sami institution or Sami high school, Sami user group, and then through my contributions, try to access these, get to those things. And I know that there's a project later on that has a tool that sort of does that. So that will be an exciting talk afterwards. So that's the first of these case studies. The second one is much less problematic. So it looks at historical music. And this came from us getting a collection that contained both audio recordings, but also the sheet music that these audio recordings, what do you say, depict. And images of the performance or of the actual records themselves. So we're trying to figure out how would you in structured data connect all of these, so they're not just 3 separate files possibly talking about a general song, but not saying that it's actually from the same moment in time. And if we digitize the score sheet to make it machine readable, how do we connect that digital thing, whether it lives on Wikisource or somewhere else, again, to this other material? And what part of it should live on Commons, what part of it should live on Wikidata, so on. So that's the first chunk of that. And then the second one is, can we use, so if we digitize these score sheets and then we have structured data about that gives us the copyright status of it, can we use that to encourage the creation of new recordings, free recordings of this music? Because very often score sheets might be free, sheet music might be free, but not the recordings because of layers of other copyright. And the third case study is the one that we've not done so much on yet. It primarily looks at more traditional images, and it looks at how can we describe metadata structures for different specialized topics. So for instance, if a GLAM institution has scanned points, if we can have a structure for that, that makes it easier to figure out how we do the mapping. Same thing if they have pictures of clothing. If we have a structure on that we use on Wikimedia Commons, again, that will make it easier to do mapping, but will also allow us to check which images that of these are missing obvious key metadata. And then we can try to do crowdsourcing campaigns to fill that out. And finally, for organizations that haven't yet digitized this content, having something like that would make it easier for us when we contact them, either help them digitize or to make it available, make sure that these key facts are captured already at digitization. Because it's extremely common that we get hard drive with images and then possibly a hard drive with scanned cards with information, or often not even that. And so you need that to be captured at the same time. And this is being done on Wikidata, of course, but not necessarily for the same things as we want on Commons. So that is my very quick run through of 3 quite different case studies. So I'll cut it short there. I'll take 1 question and then pass it on.
Just to complicate things, when you showed the music notes,
yeah.
Another thing to consider is if you have several handwritten versions of something, and you need to show the development of them.
Yeah, like connecting them over time, or like, yeah.
Like if it's Mozart and you had 7 drafts of this thing, so you need to have all the drafts.
Yeah, that, and then I'm guessing you might also have annotations by someone who performed them on top of that, which would be annotation, structured data annotations on top of that. So, thank you. More questions later. So, Albin, do you want to take a screen?
Yeah, it's yours. Oh.
So last round.
Hello everyone, my name is Albin Larsson, and when it's not Wikimedia, I work at the Swedish National Heritage Board, which among a lot of other things, do research and development together with museums. And for the last couple of months, we have been running a project about institutional ingestion of Wikimedia data. So for many, many years, we have had this process of GLAMs donating data to Wikimedia Commons, to Wikipedia, and to Wikidata. But in addition to that, people actually change this data, they update it, and no GLAMs want to get this data back. So, however, our approach was about this entire process, from collecting the data and encouraging people to add data around GLAMs. We also did like the entire process down to how do the GLAM ingest this data in their own master data system and maintain it long term. A subset of this was about structured data on Commons. So we had the opportunity to run several campaigns or several pilots together with 3 museums. So what we did was we did one with Wikitext, we did one with Wikidata, and we did one pilot with structured data on Commons. Exactly that. 2 of the things we did, we were on 2 crowdsourcing campaigns. We invited users to improve metadata about GLAM content donated. The pilot which did structured data on Commons was this one. We collected the pic statements for different images related to fashion from the Nordic Museum. So you had a base gap. You were presented with an image. You search for items in Wikidata which were added to Commons as the pic statements, and this way we just collected new and new statements. And what we did here, because GLAMs often use like controlled vocabularies of some kind, so this is actually not everything that you can depict from Wikidata. This is a subset. This is the Europeana fashion vocabulary. And what we found out after talking to users of this tool was that there was a mismatch between the vocabulary and what were on Wikidata. So users could go by and try to find something which wasn't in Europeana's vocabulary, but was in Wikidata. So they were annoyed by this fact. But the GLAM itself only used to control vocabulary. But this showed us the opportunity that we can find like holes in existing vocabularies by having users like find the missing pieces, which were really interesting to see. another thing we discovered, where we, for one pilot, which wasn't the structured data commons one, we used machine learning, which for translations of like entire descriptions. And one thing we realized was that there could be errors, and it didn't make sense. We had no way of communicating that this was a machine translation. So we had a similar problem to what Andrea went into earlier, that we need to tell the origin of the data. This was, however, created by a machine, but it was also accepted by a user. But there could be errors, similar to like using machine vision. There will always be error and biases in that, but we need to be able to communicate that for the end user. And this also applied to like problematic data that Andrea talked about, like when we have GLAM collections from the 20s in Sweden that is really racist about Sami people, for example. And I'm going to be really brief today because there's a long presentation about this entire project tomorrow, everything we did, but there was 2 conclusions related to structured data commons. This project has kind of entered a new stage. We're just now going into a communication and workshop part of this project, but all our tools and code and our report, it's all open, it's all on Commons or on a Git repository, and we sharing everything. And it's a very exciting thing about this project, even if it was a research and development project, where we just looked into the challenges of this ingestion. Actually, 2 museums are currently in the process of like putting this in production, like really having it in their master data and serving it for their end users. Thank you very much. We have 1 question that we could take, and then tomorrow I can take a lot of questions. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to present you the ISA or ISA tool. I actually don't know how other people call it. You should have a document in your hands. If you don't have some, there are some more here to present the tool. This is a tool we actually started discussing just a year ago. It was during Wikimedia in Cape Town. That came from a double need somehow. The first reason it exists is that we wanted to do something related to Wikiloves Africa. So quick reminder, Wikiloves Africa has been running as a photographic contest for already 5 years, and in 5 years we collected nearly 50,000 images. Some of those images are, have poor categorization of next to no description, and of course at that time there was no depicts and no caption and all those things. So there's a huge amount or a huge number of images to work from. The second thing is that we also wanted a way to actually involve all the editors improving those images during the year in between 2 contests. So that was the first thing. And then we talked with Sandra last year. Did you come to us?
I can't really remember.
I think you came to us, but I'm not quite sure. So she came to me and to Ayla. So Ayla is another person in the team, Ayla. And we started discussing what we could do that could involve at the same time Wikiloves Africa and structured data. And that was discussed during the year, and then we involved 3 more people. There's Eugene from Cameroon, who is the developer of the tool, and unfortunately, guess what? Didn't get the visa. The usual story. And then there are 2 more people, and one is missing, that's Navino from Istropedia, and the last one is Sean. So Sean is here, and Sean was more particularly working on the design. So any question you have about the design, yes, again. No, in truth, we did that together. And so what is that? It's a micro contribution tool that's mostly that's working on desktop but is mobile friendly. And the idea is to facilitate the addition of two types of structured data, that's the caption and the depicts. So though now that I know that you added image quality, I would love to see image quality on top of that. Just yeah, a dream. And what is a bit specific about the tool is that we also added a system so that people could actually create campaigns. Create campaigns, a person will define a set of categories of images and create a campaign with that. Can I switch to the tool to...
I think just escape, and then you can go to the other window.
Yes, okay, so that's the home page. The tool is officially launched, though I would still consider it in beta mode. You can access it from the VMF Tool Labs, ISA/ISA. That's the main page of the tool. And when you're in the tool, you have a collection of campaigns. So we already created a bunch of campaigns. Here, sorry. So this is the home page of campaign. And what happened is that we can create a campaign or participate to the tool only when we are logged in. So log in as usual through the Wikimedia Commons account. So Ayla created a campaign for us. For example, the people at work across Africa, that's the result, the 18,000 images collected through the Wikiloves campaign last year. This campaign, when you access it, will propose an interface where we will collect the information about the contribution to the tool. So on the left-hand side, you have the people, the contributor who already contributed to improve the image, and on the right-hand side, the country. So the idea behind this is to use the tool to make some little challenges, fun moments where an organizer can select categories of images, and then maybe for a little while, maybe during an editathon, maybe over a week, challenge the people to contribute. And the best contributors or the most contributing countries will be listed here. How does that work? If I get started, let's say I pick up Algeria. I get started here. I am served the images. I can go next, or back, or next image. I see I have access here directly to the file on Wikimedia Commons. I see the description, the basic data from Meta directly on Commons, and here below I have the possibility to add the depict and the picture. I don't think I'm logged in. I am logged in.
Yeah, it's me.
So can you tell me? That's her, so I can. All right. So can I play? Can I bundleize the image?
Yes.
Don't. She said yes, right? All right. So what is the guy doing? I don't know what the name of that tool.
Angle grinder.
A what?
Angle grinder.
Angle grinder. Angle grinder. Oh, there's one. Here we are. So yeah, no creation of Wikidata entry here. It's entirely grabbed from Wikidata itself. Then I save. I can put maybe that's prominent. I save, and this is saved on Wikimedia Commons.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
Yes, very simple. Then I can add captions as well. I can select up to 5 languages in the preference of the user. And normally, if I go back to the campaign, well, we have an addition somewhere. This is Spinster, sorry. So we have an addition here of Spinsters. So essentially, that's the tool. That there are still quite a lot of things to do on it. Trying to go back to help. 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 Just a couple. How much time do I have left?
Oh,
Am I already 5 minutes? Yeah, that's been joking. Yeah. Okay. So essentially, just a few additional information. The project involved 3 organizations, so it was a collaboration between the Structured Data Group, Istropedia with Navino and Schön, and us from Wiki in Africa. Everything is available directly on the tool labs, and there is a Fabricator area. On this fabricator area, you can enter new suggestions, you can enter bugs, and of course you can help. And we would need help. Maybe you can give a little bit of feedback on this. Did you look at the tasks that were available recently or no? No, me neither. Sean, maybe?
The tasks on the fabricator,
Yeah.
the hackathon.
Do you want to say a few words about this? Or do you want me to? I can give
Carry
just a couple of suggestions of things that we will need your help on. Right now it's only in English and French. We will connect that to the translation wiki and we will need some help to make that available in other languages. So any type of languages. Okay, that's the first thing. A second example is that currently the image, of course, we would prefer that they be served in an order, random order, but based on the lacking information. So images without any depicts, without any data, without caption should come first, and the other one should come last. This is not the case right now. It's a real random surveying, so that's another example. So there's a bunch of no, it's not a regular order now. It's being mixed, but it's not based on the amount of information. So of course, if we have 18,000 images, it's hard to make sure that we go through all of them. There's so that's a second example, but there are others. Now there is something specific to the tool. I don't need to show that. Campaigns are the entry points. There's a home page for the tool, but the goal is for people to create campaigns. People creating campaigns can be anyone. That can be Ayla, that can be you, that can be you. It doesn't matter as long as you have an account. When you create a campaign, you define the beginning of it, the end of it, and the different categories that goes into the campaign. And then you can add, and you put a logo. It can be for example, the Wikiloves Africa logo. And then you can advertise this URL to the people you want to involve in the campaign. So they don't have to go to the entry point of the tool, they go through the campaign itself. And then in the campaign you have two possibilities. We wanted it to be super friendly for Wikiloves campaign. So of course we did it for Wikiloves Africa, but that's the same for Wikiloves Monument or Wikiloves Earth or any one. Why is that specific? It's for countries. So in this case, we will put the upper category of the Wikiloves, and then the system will automatically collect the images based on the country. So image from Wikiloves Africa 2019 in Nigeria, for example. And that's why we collect afterwards the information, the statistical information based on the country. But even though it was with the idea of Wikiloves in mind, this is open to any type of category. So if you want to do it on the category Stockholm, then you can do it in the category Stockholm, no problem. It goes down up to 5 categories, up to 5. So it can be 0, maybe that's a few images. So feel free to try to use on this. Another set of things that was important for me in the design of the tool is statistics. We wanted to collect as much information as possible on the people participating to campaign, because this is often planned as meant during an event. And the people, they need to report on that afterwards. And often collecting information is not so easy. And I also don't want them to have to draw graphics afterwards. So the idea is really to provide, the information is already available on CSV format. But the next step is also to provide in little graphics directly on the tool from which we can do screenshots, right? So essentially that's it. Ayla, do you want to say something more about the communication around this? What do we want to do?
So we're going to launch, although it's beta launched here, we're going to launch a campaign around Wikiloves Africa, possibly in by the end of the month, just to cause a little bit of excitement around in the community, and especially around the people who have already been working on Wikiloves Africa across Africa. But so also just listen out for that. There's also quite a comprehensive, by the end of it, we'll have a comprehensive manual, both for users and for campaign organizers. Okay, that's it.
Yep. Sure, do you want to add something?
I think you covered everything.
So,
More time.
anything you don't like is
Yeah, I have to say, if anyone has any technical questions, although I don't know everything of the back end and how it all works, I do know some of the basics and I can ask the other developers. So if anyone wants to know more about how it actually works and how it was achieved and what's been done, you can find me and ask me, and I will answer those questions for you, or try to anyway.
try to. Otherwise,
Do my
we'll
best.
grab Jean and
Yeah.
Navino to do that. And thank you for our beautiful host.
One question.
You have no, there is one question over there.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Well, I'm very interested in using the tool, but we already have a Sami workshop next week, and that's a Skald Sami, which is not a Wikipedia language, so it's a marginal language. First of all, are there any obstacles in having that function in Skald Sami, and then what would be the timeline of having extra languages?
This Sami language is not recorded in the interface of MediaWiki.
Well, there is a tiny difference. The user interface is not translated, but it's made available in Wikidata as well as structured data on Commons, so it's an in-between language without user interface translation, but it's a special case.
So normally, what will happen for the translation till now? We did it by hand. Well, Sean mostly integrated my translation in French in the interface directly. But otherwise, afterwards, we want to use the Translate Wiki system to do that, but the Translate system has not been connected yet to the tool. I don't know what's the timeline with that.
It's almost there.
It's almost there.
Yeah, nothing new, just finishing it off now. So I would say the next couple of days, it should all be up in Translate Wiki for people to start actually adding translations.
But the only
So check out in a few days.
Yeah.
Check the thing in a few days, yeah.
the only problem, sorry.
The only problem to look out for is how many of the because you can't create a depict statement through the tool. How many of those statements exist on Wikidata that you could then link?
Yeah.
So maybe it's a way of looking through the things and then creating those statements in Wikidata and then it would be a back and forth. But yeah, I would imagine that's the only issue at the moment.
Yeah, just in case it was not, I'm not sure it was clear. The depicts information is dragged directly from Wikidata. So if I can put it in French, I can put it in English or another language, it's recognized. But if the words hasn't been translated in Sami, it will not show up. So that would be the limitation. Yeah. Another last question? Yeah, next person. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Sandeep. I work with Sandra as part of the community programs team, and I'm going to talk about how we're trying to work with Wikisource, digitized books, and structured data on Commons. And this is about that. So my native community is Punjabi, and for this pilot, I worked with the Punjabi community, so I'm practically wearing two hats for this. So what we did is we took this really specific genre of Punjabi literature, which is like from 19th century and early 20th century. It's very specific in the sense that we don't have a lot of metadata about these books available. Even when they were published, is not available on the books itself. So a lot of research had to be done to figure out whether that book is copyright free or not, and in some cases it was to understand whether the author has died like before a specific date. That's not something though which concerns structured data, but we wanted to figure out the entire workflow, like where do we start, how do we get this content, this bibliographic data onto Wikidata, and how do we then connect it to Commons,
And there are some next steps we still want to do is how do we then connect that to Wikisource. So that's like the idea behind it, and I'm going to show you where we are at this point. We collected these works. We got from a private collection. We got these 20 books, and then we collected metadata. We figured out some from the books itself, like the name, author, and that's still going on. As of now, we have only been able to ascertain that 5 of these works are public domain. For others, we don't have information. So that's still going on. But we have still, anyways, we have created Wikidata items about them. So that bibliography data is on Wikidata, and like not in the complete sense, but whatever we have as of now. And we have scanned the works and ready to upload them. We have even uploaded some of them. So after like this, collecting the metadata, this is a listeria list from all the data we have. Like we have the list, we have the names, the author name, and then we are also using the recently introduced copyright statements on Wikidata. So we are identifying them, and we have references why this work is copyright-free, public domain, which is something that the indie communities or like the larger Wikisource community hasn't been doing a lot. So how we are like the main problem with this with digitized works and structured data on Commons is that the metadata for these editions of books is going to live on Wikidata, not on Commons. Because for images, you're talking about a specific image, but for books, you're talking about an edition of a book, and that metadata goes to Wikidata. So the main problem is, what is that thing that then goes to Commons? We're still trying to figure that out. For example, about that specific copy of that edition. For example, that this comes from a private collection. Like this is one thing. Now, what other thing we can do with structured data on Commons and those Wikidata items is that we can connect them using the depicts statement or maybe some other statement. We're still trying to figure that out. We don't know. And why we are trying to do this, like all this, is that currently this different the metadata about books, it lives in different places and it's not connected. So we have bibliographic data on Wikidata, which is in some cases connected to the template book on Commons, and in some cases it's not. But we need template book on Commons to be able to use that information to get that metadata to Wikisource, which is done for creating these index pages, which I don't know if a lot of you people are familiar with Wikisource, but there is this duplication of metadata going on. That's what I want to like mention here or stress about, is that we create metadata on Wikidata. We will still have to create that in template book on Commons as of now. So we are still trying to figure out how we can use structured data on Commons, how we can make connections that this file is this Wikidata item, and then the rest can be done automatically on Commons, getting the data on Commons, and then from Commons to Wikisource when we create a file about that specific PDF copy of an edition of a book. So that's what we're trying to figure out. And these were the open questions I've already talked about, and this is basically it. So this is completely different from what we have heard about like structured data on Commons, but this is what we're doing in Indic languages or Wikisource, which is cool. So I'm not going to take one question, I'm going to take more because it's the end of the presentation, so feel free to ask. I'll only give like others the chance after we are finished with this. Yeah.
Yeah, if there are general
Any feedback, so not even questions, I want feedback. I want to know what's your idea, what more content about a specific copy of an edition of a book can we add to structured data on Commons? We have a question there.
There's a class on Wikidata for individual copy of book. So why not make the data on Wikidata about the individual copy?
Yeah.
I know that's what we're doing for some engravings and some maps. And those are
like some manuscripts or something.
Not just manuscripts, obviously, are individual copies.
Yeah.
But prints or maps may be produced, and there are thousands of old ones.
Okay.
there may be slightly different color variations between different ones, so it may well be worth having an individual item on Wikidata. I don't think anyone would object.
Okay, yeah. We still wanna connect the both files though. Yeah, I like that. What do you think should be done?
Should I come? Do I have a microphone?
Yeah, sure.
I'm an archivist by trade. I don't do. I'm not a librarian, but I'm guessing that when it comes to, like you said, manuscripts, they're individual, and if they're really old, they're unique. But the question is, how many copies do we want to keep track of? I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but when it comes to printed material, there is the discussion of. You could have the discussion of, is there a usefulness in having multiple Wikidata entries if the intention is that it was only one set. If there are separate editions, that's one thing. But yeah.
Yep.
It depends how much you individually want to say about each book, but maybe create it as an individual copy of the book first. And if you find you've got more copies, then promote it to be an item about the edition.
You have something? Anyone else? Like, we need serious feedback on this before we can move forward. And yeah, we need to solve the thing about the template. Yeah, because we want to move away from templates. We want everything to be structured and everything to be connected to each other, from Wikidata to Commons to Wikisource. Yes.
Templates are linking to Wikidata or Commons, right? So, but that hasn't happened on Wikisource yet.
Yes, that's also the thing. Like we're just directly taking from like the text from the template on Commons as of now. So it's not. We need to think something about that, and we also need to establish the connection between the Wikidata entry item about that book at that specific edition copy and the Commons file. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, I had 3 questions. Yeah. Okay, for other projects. Okay, cool.
I have a question regarding annotations. I don't know how much they've been used, but on Wikimedia, on Commons, there is the function of annotations, and I used them for a while, not that much. But are they in any way going to be? I mean, you're aware of the annotations, right? Are they used much? Do you know, on Commons? Like commenting on a specific part of a picture, and then it's metadata that is specific to Commons.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, if we go the Wikidata route, what happens to the annotations? Because some of them are really good, at least the ones I wrote.
I've done some of them myself as well, and I know our Brazilian community is fantastic at that. I don't know if we have any people from that community. Yes. Yeah. So I've put in my slide of things to come that annotations are indeed the thing that we are thinking about. Of indeed having also the structured links to Wikidata there. Does anyone in this room know how to figure out how many we have already? Because you
look at template usage.
Template, is it also a template? That
Yeah.
No.
It's weird syntax on the page.
Yeah.
Or use the search and it will tell you how many
Yeah,
searches.
I see it occasionally, not super heavily used, but I think when it's being used, it's because of very good reasons. So, we are in agreement that it's an important thing to look at. More questions for anyone who presented here? Yeah.
So, I know that someone also built a way to use Wikidata to specify annotations, essentially. So, like, this bit of the image is where this face is. I'm not gonna. Yeah, I'll leave that out.
Yeah. Yeah, and there has also been some IIIF experimentation to, integrate that with IIIF for those who, get excited. More questions? Otherwise, people will just get 15 minutes of their lives. Oh no, you don't want that. I'm gonna go read these first. I'm sorry.
So I have a small question around the nationality part. Whenever you're signaling that, is that like a sort of like technical standard, or only based on the category that it's already been assigned in Commons?
Yeah, that's maybe something we also discussed with Wikilaws Africa. So yeah, currently what is in there is it's only on a few images still because that technology to be able to do that hasn't been around for a long time. And what people are adding there now is all the community assessed stuff. So we have a process on Commons where you can say, hey, I made this nice photo. Can you grade it? And then people say, oh, this is a quality image. This is a featured image. And those kind of labels are currently already being stored. But yeah, we've had a discussion with Wikilaws Africa with Isa also whether we want to have some more subjective. Just every user can say whether they find an image of good quality. But then you get into a black hole of discussions about who gets to decide and how do you weigh it. And does that answer your question or?
Yes. And it also has more questions.
Yes, I know.
We can tackle them later.
Yes, actually, on Sunday afternoon we also have a session on problems and opportunities, and this is a nice thing to talk about there. So I'm making a little note.
So you mentioned that when we have the Lua for structured data on Commons, it will also be accessible from Wikipedia. Are you sure about that?
My colleagues told me that it's true. I will repeat what they say.
Okay. Just wondering, and about the image it's used about 200,000 times.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
So about 0.5% of all files. Anyone else?
More questions?
Just something to take into account that you have featured image on Commons, but you also have featured images on other Wikipedias. And it's not necessarily the same images.
No, yeah. Yeah, we also get the question a lot, like there's of course images hosted on other wikis. We have been talking about it in the team, of course. Now within this grant we have focused on Commons. I don't think there are really already very set plans to enable the same technology for other wikis because it's of course smaller sets of images, but we've definitely been talking about it. And yeah, but no promises here. More questions? Remarks? No. Then yeah, thank you very much. And,